very happy to be with everyone here today. And so first, let me say commend you for being here because we as a realtor community, we endeavor to help our buyers, our sellers, the community at large to better understand what resources are available to them. We typically tend to be an advisor. We guide them through their processes and sometimes remain friends with them thereafter as well, after the transaction is done. Sometimes we are able to call our clients now family. So let's talk about down payment resource assistance programs, long name, or AKA grants, all right? And yes, throughout the presentation, I will even give you case studies where I've helped my own clientele obtain grants. This is something, grants, that's very attainable. You just have to learn the eligibility criteria. You just have to learn who to work with. You just have to learn how to introduce and educate the community about down payment resources. So let's get to it. Let me share my screen with you. And here we go. So down payment resources for the entry level buyer. Let's talk about myths versus truth. Now, the myths will be debunked today, okay? And you're welcome. First things first, down payment means it's just for low-income buyers. No, some of our low-income buyers might say, I can't get this because I have low income. No, this is meant for, yes, low income and moderate income buyers, and I'll explain further. Now, for our renters that are looking to become buyers and they say, hey, I have low income, it is our right, it is our duty, and I might say even our privilege to be able to explain to them how they might qualify for down payment resources, okay? Second, down payment is limited. Limited to what? It's not limited. We just have to learn where each buyer might fit. Here's the thing. Down payment is offered at the state level, at the county level, at the town level, at the city level. We just got to find out where our potential buyers, our current renters, where they fit in the categories, okay? All right. Now, third, down payment equal hard to qualify. Says who? Down payment is not hard to qualify and it's not limited. You do have to learn the eligibility criteria. And I just mentioned at the county level, at the town level, at the city level, that means you have to understand at each level how they might be able to qualify. That doesn't mean it's hard to qualify. It just means there's some research to be done. And wait a minute, realtors, it's not on all of us to do it. Okay. Now, let's do a little trivia, if you will. Did you know? One thing, let's start off with this. Our MLS, one key MLS that is, 74% of all one key MLS listings, properties, are eligible for at least one down payment assistance program. Did you know that? I'll show you later. Second, we have the Down Payment Toward Equity Act. Now, this isn't law, but it has been brought up. It first came around, I believe, in 2021. It resurfaced in 2023, and it might come up in 2025. But the whole point of the Down Payment Toward Equity Act is proposing $25,000 grant to new buyers. You know what that will do? It will help close the home ownership affordable gap. Now, we know as realtors that there is an affordable housing crisis, right? Right. So if this is passed, the Down Payment Toward Equity Act will help reduce that gap. Think about it like this. You might have your renter that's saying, I am paying X amount in rent. You might say, you're paying this in rent. It's comparable to what you would be paying a mortgage, maybe for a one-family home, maybe for a condo, maybe for a co-op. And they said, yes, I could probably afford the mortgage, but I don't have enough money saved for the down payment and the closing costs. And this is where down payment assistance programs can help them. Can you imagine paying rent that's close to the price of mortgage, but can't buy a home because you don't have enough money saved? Hmm? Okay, we all know that it's happening. So when we now educate our renters, our potential buyers of the possible, but of the potential of getting, receiving, being eligible for down payment, we have played our part in society and in our community. Okay, good. Now, third, buyer assistance programs. Let's talk. We are members of LIBOR, the Long Island Board Association of Realtors, right? Which means we are automatically under NYSAR, the New York State Association of Realtors. And NYSAR, go look it up, has what's called the Housing Opportunities Foundation. And the Housing Opportunities Foundation awards grants to first-time home buyers. And you're saying, wait, who funds this foundation? Largely us, the realtors. So again, we're giving back, not only through education, by educating our buyers about down payment assistance programs, but we're also putting our mouth where the money is, if you will. And we are supporting through our Housing Opportunities Foundation. Second of all, there is the NHF, the National Home Buyers Fund. It's a nationwide program providing grants or 3-year forgivable loans up to 5% of the mortgage loan amount. So these are things we can introduce to our buyers, okay? Now we have kind of, my favorite, the good neighbor next door, the good neighbor next door. I like to tell my little one, oh, those are some of our community helpers, like teachers from kindergarten through 12th grade, or first responders. Now, during the pandemic, we really grew in appreciation for our first responders, our law enforcement, our firefighters. They put there, and every single day, pandemic or no pandemic, every single day, they're out there to protect us, the community. So we have the good neighbor next door. And this is, again, for firefighters, law enforcement, and even our teachers. This is go to HUD.gov, and you will see that they will give them 50% off the list price. It's only with HUD Homes. It's only with HUD Homes. So go to HUD.gov, and you will see 50% off the list price will be taken off for our good neighbor next door. Now, we also have the Fannie Mae Community Seconds and the Freddie Mae Affordable Seconds. They're a similar program. Now, it might not be a grant. It's not a grant. It's not a grant. However, it's a great mortgage product that covers the entire cost of the home. You could kind of think of it as a veterans loan for our VA, a VA loan for our veterans, right? Because we know with the VA loan, it's 0% down payment. They could put a good faith estimate, sure, but it's still 0%, right? So the Fannie Mae Community Seconds and the Freddie Mae Affordable Seconds, not a grant. However, it's a great mortgage product that covers the entire cost of the home. And you're welcome. And I have more. Okay, now let's talk for a moment. DPA, down payment assistance versus family. Did you know that 39.5% of, and this is per the FHA annual report, 39.5% people utilize down payment assistance grants to help them get into that home versus asking money from their family. That's at 23.4%. Now think about it. You know your buyers tell you, hey, I can't afford the home because I don't have all the money saved up. I think I need to have 20%. I think I need to have 25%. I think I need to have 10%. Wait a minute. So they said, I can't go to my family because if I go to Aunt X, Y, and Z, she's not only going to tell the entire family that she loaned me money. Every time I go there for Thanksgiving dinner, every year I got to hear how great Aunt X, Y, and Z is because she gave me this money to buy my home, right? You're like, oh, okay. Got some family members like that, right? I know you're chuckling. So instead of doing that, hey, arm's length transaction. You can get down payment assistance. And wait, if you're saying, Natasha, how can I get the down payment assistance? I gave you some buyer assistance programs just now, and we will delve into it further. Now, types of down payment assistance. This is very important that we hone in on this now. Home ownership, there's two buckets: home ownership services, down payment assistance. Let's talk. First, did you know about the employer assisted housing program? Sometimes I think that people don't know, or they're not aware, or they don't know where to begin. Now, when your buyer is working, they can check their employer to see if they have some type of assisted housing program that might help them with the cost of down payment or the cost of closing costs. Okay, so always say, hey, if you are able to afford the mortgage, listen, let's talk for a moment. If they're paying rent and the rent is similar to mortgage in their neighborhood, they're paying somebody's mortgage, it's just not their own. So they have to get on the track where now they're able to purchase their own property, and we shouldn't let them not having enough accumulated funds saved stop them. So employer assisted housing program can help. Tell them to ask their employer, do they have any kind of housing program to assist? Okay, second, lender home buyer programs. What does that mean? Sometimes the banks will have in-house funds, in-house grants for their buyers. Some is advertised, some is not. Here's what I say to you, realtor. Ask the buyer. Sit down with the lender. Say, hey, do you have any in-house programs? Any programs that can assist with down payment or closing costs? There's many out there. Ask, and you'll be surprised what you find, okay? Third, there's grants at this level, at the town, I mentioned it earlier, at the county and at the city, like Town of Brookhaven, at the county, Suffolk or Nassau County, and don't forget our 5 boroughs. So there's grants at various levels. Now, there's also monthly first-time home buyer orientations. And let me pause and put a plug in for LIBOR. May I? Can I? Will I? I will. I am. LIBOR has now sponsored these first-time home buyer sessions, working with our political government body. And these events are happening in various areas. Direct to the consumer. So the consumer is also being educated on the fact that they can obtain down payment assistance programs. Now, what I have here on the slide, that was a shameless plug, and I'm back. Monthly first-time home buyer orientations. This is also being held by banks, and here's for the introduction, held by housing agencies. Did you hear me? If I didn't tell you before, I'm going to tell you now. Get pen and paper, because this tea I'm about to give you is piping hot. Okay? All right. Listen, our housing agencies is what we'll talk about next. This realtor community will make the difference for us to help our buyers better. Our housing agencies has what's called HUD certified counselors. That's a Department of Housing and Urban Development. These HUD certified counselors are the ones that will explain, and you will work in tandem with, to introduce down payment assistance programs to our buyers. Okay, so it's not you, the realtor, that has to carry the entire weight of education, but you're definitely a point of introduction. You could also be a point of not only introduction, but you can introduce them to the counselor. So one is introducing the concept of down payment assistance, and that they don't have to give up hope that they cannot afford a home because they don't have all the money saved. And then you're introducing again, perhaps, to the actual housing agencies. Stop. You said, but I still don't know who the housing agencies are. Wait, we're getting there. Okay, now, but it's important that you learn this. The certified counselor will provide one-on-one pre-purchase counseling. Now, yes, us, the realtor community, we do this with our buyers. We sit down with them. We talk about their finances. We also explain that, listen, we are not, the realtors, we're not the one that's going to dictate to you, the buyer, where you should live. We're not going to dictate to you where you should live. Actually, it's your income and credit that's going to tell us where you should live. It's your pre-approval that's going to tell us, the realtors, where you will be living, right? Right. So now you're working in tandem with a counselor, a certified counselor by HUD, and they will offer one-on-one counseling. Now, once this counseling is complete, and there's orientations for maybe a couple of hours. Counseling means they sit down and go to workshops. And out of these workshops, they'll get a certificate. Now that certificate will be their golden ticket to being eligible for grants, okay? Typically valid for 1 year. All right, was that good or good? No, great, good. Now, let's talk about HUD, and let's talk about the 2024 household income limits. Now, here's a term that I want you to become familiar with, and it's AMI, Area Median Income. And it's basically saying what it is. It's based on the income, the median level of an area. It is the midpoint range of a designated demographic area income. That's a lot. I just said a mouthful. But you know, when I say AMI, that we're not actually even looking right now at the individual's income. We're looking at the income of the area. Now, you might be saying, how do we know the income of the area? You might be saying, Natasha, are you asking me to calculate these numbers? No, I am not. We don't need to. It's provided by HUD. Okay? HUD releases this information on an annual basis, and their information is the benchmark to the housing agencies that I just introduced you to on the previous slide. How do they get their numbers? It's based on the American Community Survey, better known as the census. Okay, so it's based on the census as to how they derive these numbers. And these numbers will tell the housing agency counselor if your buyer is eligible. Okay, so there's varying percentages of AMI. It can go as low as 30% all the way up to 130%. Okay, mostly these grants, these down payment assistance is dependent upon 80% AMI. I'm telling you that there's a range for your knowledge, but I'm telling you typically the housing agencies uses 80% AMI as the benchmark. Now you might be saying, okay, Natasha, you just said a mouthful. What do you mean? I'm going to give you an example, but the example is to give you the mechanic of how this works. Because again, we are not responsible for determining the AMI, and we're not responsible for determining the income that's needed, okay? But for an example, let's say the AMI, median income, for the area of Queens is $120,000. Then we're saying 80% of $120,000 is $96,000. And that $96,000 is what will help determine the eligibility criteria. Okay? Okay. Now, why am I bringing this up to you? AMI is dependent upon two factors: household size and income. Household size and income. Now, let's say a single person household size is 1. Then 80% AMI, the number is 86,009. That person needs to have income of $86,960. Or a household size of 2. They're looking at 99,440 to qualify. Okay, you get the point. You get the message. Now, again, the counselor, the HUD certified counselor, will be the one to discuss their eligibility. However, you want to be able to understand how this has come about. So if they have any questions, you know, when you turn your phone off, but for some odd reason, it just doesn't want to be turned off. So odd. And so I apologize for that. So, you know, when you're talking to your particular buyer, you explain to them that the counselor is responsible for sharing this information and will tell them about their eligibility criteria, but you need to have working knowledge of how this has come about. Okay, good. And if you're asking, yes, the household size is the number of individuals residing in that household. And of course, it also includes that particular buyer. So everyone in that household, it does make a difference. Please take pen and paper to what I just said: household size and income. Now, let's talk eligibility. Buyers must have about $3,000 to $5,000 of their own funds. Now we're going to pause for a moment and we're going to talk. And here's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. And let's have an eye to eye. I'm going to give you a case study. I had a family that came to me, and when they came to me, they had a pre-approval amount at X amount of dollars. I looked at what their income was. I looked at even their expenses, and I said to them, this seems a bit much. You might be a candidate for down payment assistance. They said, what's that? I said, let's talk about it. Now, here's what happened. Let me just tell you quickly what occurred. I introduced them to a housing agency. Matter of fact, two. They chose which one they preferred. They did the application. We were looking for homes. And we were able to get them a product, a loan product, where they only had to pay 1% down payment. This happened in Long Island. Out of pocket. And then we were able to negotiate their closing costs as part of the seller's concession. So a full seller's concession. By the end of the transaction, they were able to only pay 1% out of their pocket. So I'm telling you that this can work, but I am also being honest with you. It's not for everyone. But the more we circulate, the more we educate, the more people will be able to qualify because they're made aware of it. Okay. So I'm telling you that I've had clients that I've worked with, that I've introduced them to a housing agency. This is the lift of being qualified for a grant is with the housing agency. Our role is to encourage them. Our role is to educate them. Our role is to ensure that they understand this even exists, and to let them know, don't walk away from home ownership because you think you don't have enough. Listen to me, who's your advisor, and let you know that this is possible. Now, some buyers might say, I don't want any part of it. And some buyers might say, I'm definitely interested. It's their choice. But we give them all the options possible. Okay, now we're going to go back to sharing the screen. And that was Talk Time with Tosh, and you're welcome. Now, buyers must have at least $3,000 to $5,000 of their own funds. I might dare even say maybe $10,000, but at least $3,000 to $5,000 of their own funds. We are in the state of New York. New York means that we need to have consideration. Consideration is money. You need money to, when you sit down with the attorneys, all of us know that in the room, in order to go to contract and to have it to be binding. Okay, great. Second, they need to have adequate credit, not perfect, adequate credit. Now, there is a type of loan product that might not look for a credit score. They might look at payment history, payment longevity. So that's why I'm saying that the buyer can't think that, oh, I can't get this done. I cannot buy a home. They probably can. They just need to be educated to their options. Now, I mentioned this already. The one-on-one pre-purchase counseling session is with a HUD certified counselor. They will give them the counseling certificate once they finish their workshops. Yes, they have to go through training. The buyer has to go through training to understand the ins and outs of the grant, to understand the eligibility criteria, to understand the documents that will be needed, to understand what will be expected of them. Listen, and there is a nominal fee associated with obtaining this training from the housing agency. Okay, I got to tell you something that's very, 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 very important. Take note. If your buyer is already in the process and have signed contracts, if they're under contract, they cannot go to the housing agency. It's too late. That's part of the rules. They have to be at their beginning phase, not in the middle of the phase. You understand what I'm saying? So if they're under contract, they cannot go to the housing agencies. This is a process. The process should begin right when they're interested in looking for a house, not when they've worked with you and found the home, now already gone through signing contracts, because it's a process for the housing agencies. Let me say this as well while we're here on this topic. When they go through the process means this. Pen and paper, please. You know that they're going to work with the lender. They're going to work with you. They're going to get their pre-approval. They're going to start shopping for a home. You're going to set up these appointments. You're going to go to open houses. And before all of that started, they've signed some type of documentation because they're hiring you with their buyer's agreement, right? Okay. You've gone through those processes. Now you're searching for the home. You have a meeting of the minds with the seller. Everything's agreed upon. They sit down with their attorneys. The contract is released from the seller's attorney. The buyer's attorney received it, reviewed it. They sat down with the buyer. They came with their part of their down payment. And then now they've gone back to the seller's attorney. And now the seller has signed the contract. And now we're under contract. A lot of steps have happened where a housing agency was not involved. One of the important steps is home inspection. The housing agency might just have additional documentation that needs to be completed by a housing inspector. So if you're already under contract, we know you've already gone through the process of having a home inspector. So no, save yourself and your buyer. Do not start this process when you've already under contract. You're not giving enough time. It has to happen at the beginning, okay? There's nothing else I've left with you. I'm going to leave with you these two things. You're giving your community hope by introducing and educating them about down payment assistance. You're introducing them to a housing agency, and you're going to ensure that they don't go ahead and find a home and then saying, hey, I need a grant. It has to be proper planning. Now, next slide. Let's talk about the eligibility. Yes, they are going to be required to have a residency requirement. Natasha, what do you mean by that? The buyer will be signing a document with the housing agency stating that this is not a flip. We're not investing to flip the property. They're not an investor. They are someone who will be a primary occupant of the home. Therefore, they will sign a document stating that they'll live in that home for X amount of years. Very, very important. They cannot buy this house and then decide 2 years later we're leaving. And the residency requirement will vary per the grant, per the down payment assistance program. You're asking me how many years? Maybe 10. I can tell you the numbers, but it depends on the grant. Okay? So there is a residency requirement. I mean, think about it. Think about the mechanism of a grant. The grant is to ensure that there's home ownership in communities. Those tax dollars are helping to build the community. And so there is going to be some type of requirement, a residency requirement. And yes, you can look at least for 10 years. Okay. Now, there another type of requirement or eligibility criteria. The purchase price. There are maximum limits on the actual purchase price. So we're not out here talking about we're buying $3 or $4 or $5 million properties, okay? All right. So there is a purchase price limit. And yes, it can vary between an existing structure or a new construction home. Okay. And yes, that's why we're working in tandem with the housing agency who can navigate our buyer in the right step, for the right steps to take in receiving said grant. Yes, I mentioned it earlier. I'll say it again. And it is specific to an area or a town. We know that the 5 boroughs will have different criteria versus Nassau versus Suffolk versus Westchester versus the Bronx. We get it, right? Good. Now I'm going to say something to you, and it's very important. Pen and paper, please. All eyes on me, and thank you. Funding pause. There are times I've experienced it with my own buyer where there was a funding pause by HUD. Natasha, what are you saying? I am saying that sometimes they run out of money. Okay, wait. Listen, they run out of money. It's not the end of the world. Let me tell you a tip. It happened to me, so I'm giving you experience. Had a client, was looking to buy end of November, mid-December, somewhere around there. Listen to what I just said, end of November, mid-December. So we know that there's sometimes a buying frenzy during the summer because people are looking to go to different schools and everyone now is ready to buy and they're not on vacation. They're looking to purchase. They want to get in before the school year. They have a number of reasons why they're looking to purchase. But we know that sometimes, a lot of times, every time, real estate is cyclical. So therefore, we know that everyone is in a buying frenzy, and maybe during the winter, they might slow down, right? Right. And there, the grants are allocated to those people that have gone through the eligibility criteria, and the housing agency have administered these funds, and therefore, the money could run out. In my case, the money ran out because it was, yes, November to mid-December, and all the money was used during the summer and the fall. However, the attorney that you're using is with the housing agency, and they will put in clauses to protect the buyer. So in my case, in my situations, what happened was the money, yes, there was a pause. However, you also know what also happens, right? Sometimes the buyers might have applied for that store card ahead of time and might have changed your DTI on the back end and no longer can qualify for that mortgage, which means the house goes back on market, which means they've also lost that funding, unfortunately. And that's why the housing agencies are so important, because we are giving the same message. The realtor and the housing agencies giving the same message. Please make sure that you stay on top of all your expenses. Please make sure that you're saving as much as you can. Please make sure you don't open any new lines of credit. Please wait to do anything until you close and have the keys in your hand and walk out of that attorney's office and everything has been sealed, right? Right. So there are cases where that does not happen. The property goes back on the market, and then that funding, that grant is available. In my case, that's what happened. We already had the clause within our contracts, and therefore the buyer was saved. We extended the contract a little bit longer. The funding became available. She was able to utilize that funding, and it helped towards her closing costs. You said, wait, what, Natasha? Closing costs. So these grants can help with down payment, and enough can be left over to help with the closing costs. You're welcome. Now, this one-on-one pre-purchase counseling with a HUD certified counselor, they're going to review all their documents. They're going to define what the action plan is, how soon can they buy. They're going to assess their affordability, what's the AMI for the areas that they can buy in, and then they're going to have the power team. Now, everything here is things that we are familiar with, but now we're working in tandem with the counseling, right? Now, the power team is us. It's the realtor, it's the housing agency, it's the home inspector, it's the attorney, it's, freedom of choice with picking your own title company, right? Buyer's rights. So that's what's going to happen in the counseling session. They're going to talk to them about that. Now, please get out this is the paparazzi moment, all right? We are now talking about the housing agencies. Who are the housing agencies? Let's start off with the Bronx because we're not going to forget about them. We're going to start off with the 5 boroughs first. The Bronx and Staten Island. We have the Bronx NHS. They speak in languages for English and Spanish. We have Neighborhoods for a Sustainable Future, again, English and Spanish speaking counselors, and Northfield Community Local Development Corporation, speaking Russian, English, and Spanish. If you have not screenshotted this, please do so now, because these are the housing agencies that you'll be introducing your buyer to. Next, Brooklyn. Brooklyn doesn't have 3, it has 6. Screenshot. Good. We have Brooklyn Neighborhood Services. We have Grow Brooklyn. We have Impact Brooklyn. We have MHANY Management Inc. We have Neighborhood Helping Neighbors. And then we have NHS of Brooklyn. Okay? Screenshot, please. Next. And if you're asking, I didn't screenshot ahead of time, how can I get this information? There will be a replay as well. Now Manhattan with 5 housing agencies: Abyssinian Development Corp, Asian American for Equality, speaking Mandarin and Cantonese. We have the Harlem Congregations for Community Improvement. We have the Housing Partnership Development Corp and NHS of New York City Home Ownership Center. And we keep going. Queens has 5. Asian Americans for Equality. Chaya CDC, speaking Bangla, Bengali, Hindu, and Urdu. Then we have Margaret Community Corporation, NHS of Jamaica, and NHS of Queens, CDC. Okay? And that's for Queens. Long Island. We have Community Development Corp, or CDLI. We have CHI, Community Housing Innovations, which also touches Westchester. And then we have LIHP, Long Island Housing Partnership. Okay? I hope you got all of that, but do remember there will be a replay because this is a webinar. So the replay will be made available. Now, let's talk grant stacking. That's my term. So if you hear somebody else saying they got it from me. Grant stacking means this. They don't have to only qualify for just one grant. Remember earlier in the presentation, I mentioned one key MLS states that there's 74% of those properties listed there that qualifies for at least one grant. And I'm here to tell you, depending on the area, depending on the criteria, buyers can qualify for more than one grant. And I call it grant stacking. Now, important to note, the source of the grant cannot be the same. So they see 2 different grants under Suffolk County or under one of the house. It can't not be that they're going to double dip, okay? So that's important that you'll be working with the housing agency to understand the source of a grant that they will be eligible for. And that's why we are very grateful to our counselors, because the counselors working with us, the realtor, will make sure that there's no overlap, okay? Now, so we layer these grants. Agency grants, Sony Mae loan product, that's our state mortgage. So, we have our FHA programs that you pay 3.5% down. We have our Sony Mae programs that it varies how much might be paid down. And then you have our conventional loans. We have our veterans loans. I talked about earlier, our Freddie Mae, our Fannie Mae. There's various loan products, but I have to highlight Sony Mae because Sony Mae allows us to grant stack. Okay. Then there's our lender programs, which I told you before. Check your bank. Ask them, do you have housing grants? Ask your buyer to talk to their bank and ask if they have housing grants. You might be pleasantly surprised. Some of these grants from the lender, from the bank, could be 5,000. It could be based on only the area, has nothing to do with their income. So they might qualify for a grant just based on the area, not even having anything to do with their income. Okay. So layering these grants from agency grants to Sony Mae product loans is what's very important. Lender grants, and Sony Mae has various products. So let's get into it. Now, for the 5 boroughs, the name Home First, the name of the grant is Home First. Let me tell you something. I have been doing this for over 10 years. And what's important about that is this wasn't always up to $100,000. This was up to $40,000. But I played a role, I would like to think, but I played a role, all jokes aside, of advocating for our buyers, talking to our housing agencies, seeing how can this be increased from HUD, because we know that the price of homes are going up. And if the price of homes are going up, that means the down payment is also going up. And $40,000, to be quite honest, just wasn't enough. Now it's up to $100,000 towards down payment and or closing costs. It has to be residential. So 1, 2, 3, or 4 family home, a condo, or a co-op. Your buyer must have at least 1% of their own funds. Like I said, they do need to have some money, not all the money, but some money. And it has to pass a housing inspection. What does that mean? I mentioned it earlier. The home inspector, the agency might have additional criteria. It's right here. They have to pass their housing inspection. Okay? So getting the home inspection is one thing, and then passing it based on the housing agency's criteria is another. They want to make sure they're making a good investment. Okay? Next, Nassau County. They have the home down payment assistance program. Screenshot, please. $25,000 grant, again, towards down payment and or closing costs. Yes, there's a purchase price limit. I said that earlier. And it's administered via LIHP, Long Island Housing Partnership. Now, Suffolk County, it's also called the Home Down Payment Assistance Program. It offers $5,000 more, $30,000 grant. However, the difference here, it's only for down payment, not directed towards closing costs. It is town specific, and it is administered by the Suffolk County Office of Community Development. And I said there's also programs on the town level. So we just finished it. We finished the boroughs, we finished the counties, and now we're at the town level. Town of Brookhaven, they call theirs the Home Down Payment Assistance Program, and it's up to $39,000. Yes, there's a purchase price limit. Yes, it's village and hamlet specific, and it's administered by LIHP. Oh, wait a minute. You can grant stack with the Town of Brookhaven grant. Okay, now Town of Babylon. Wait a minute. Take a special note. You can grant stack here. And if you don't remember what I just said, grant stacking, my term, means that you can get more, you can layer the grants. That means not only $39,000, it could be additional grants that they qualify that they can add to that amount. Okay. LIHP has what's called the CSP program, the Community Stabilization Program, where I like this program because they kind of get to act like a cash investor, right? So what's the point of this? It's stabilizing the neighborhood. There might be a blighted property. It might be a distressed property. It might be a foreclosure, and maybe the investor passed on it for whatever reasons. Your buyer can act as an investor and receives up to $30,000 for that property, obviously to renovate. And then if you're using the Sony Mae loan, you can qualify and grant stack. I've been talking all things Sony Mae, and let me continue here. Let's dig down a little bit deeper. They have what's called Achieving the Dream. No points. You can put down 3% for your down payment, and the minimal cash contribution is 1%. I want you to understand what I just said here. Their cash contribution, 1%. So where's the other 2 coming from, you might ask? Maybe from friends and family. But they can do 1%. How do I know this worked? My buyer, I was able to get my buyer to qualify, and they were approved for a Sonnie Mae loan with their lender, and we were able to get them into their home for their family with 1% out of their pocket, because yes, I was able to negotiate a full seller's concession as well. Okay, good. Second, NRP, Neighborhood Revitalization Program, kind of similar to CSP over that we just talked about. This is helping to giving money, $20,000 to help renovate a home. You know, maybe you walk in the home, you're like, oh, that kitchen isn't so wonderful. Now you have $20,000 if you apply for the grant to fix that kitchen. And now there's also the down payment assistance loan, 0% interest rate, up to $15,000. And after 10 years, it becomes a grant because it's forgiven. Okay. Now, I've really just talked about everything. I have given you all the information. This is your takeaway. You work with a housing agency, you work with their counselor, you bring the buyer to them. The buyer will then go through their process as far as attending orientation, going through the workshop, giving them the documentations. There's one other thing you have to realize. That housing agency work with lenders. Lenders who will also help them with their pre-approval. One-stop shop. And we're introducing them to resources that they might not have known about. So if you have some renters who have told you in the past, I can't buy, go back to your phone, look them up, call them, say, I just spoke to Natasha Williams of Cornelius Group, and she just told me about down payment assistance. This might be able to change your situation. I hope you took screenshots of the housing agencies. And if you didn't, there'll be a replay available later. Now, let's talk about, this is a member benefit alert. Now, what are we looking at? We know we're looking at Stratus. And in Stratus, look at the arrows. Look at the arrows. Okay? There is the down payment resources. You're like, Natasha, what are you talking about? Look at the arrows. It's under our One Key MLS links. Down payment resources. Let me tell you what happened here. You could appreciate this if you have done this previously. Before, when I had to help my buyers understand down payment resources, I had to go to a separate website. We would have to put in a couple of different addresses because they'll tell me where they wanted to live. We will look to see if it was available. There was a lot more processes involved just a few years ago. Now, it's right here in our MLS, okay? And it is down payment resources. So you're seeing here right now, and I hope you're tag teaming right now. I hope you're pulling up your screen. I hope you're going into Stratus. I hope you put in your ID number, and I hope that you've looked for One Key MLS links and found down payment resources. Now, once you do that, it brings you to this page. Welcome. Add your free down payment connect lead gen page to your website, email, and social. What did I just say? Wait, you thought you were just coming here to learn about down payment resources? I'm also giving you a way to market these down payment resources, and you're welcome. Now, there's a whole suite here that you can play with this afternoon. I'm going to DPR pricing tool. One last thing before I leave this page. I hope you follow the instructions. Go to Stratus, enter your ID number, go to down payment resources. Down payment resources will lead you to this page, and then you can now add your free down payment connect lead gen page to where? Your website, your email, your social media, and they give you the link for your landing page. Yes, if you go to corneliusgroup.us, you will see my link there too. This is an awesome resource. I appreciate it even more because I've done this before where I did not have this tool. Now, what do we see here? You can even let them play around a little bit. You can type in the address and it'll tell you the number of matched programs to the side. It will list all the grants that will be available to them based on the property address. Remember that thing I told you about? The American Community Survey? The census? Okay, did this get good? Did this get hot? I think it's hot. This is hot right now. Why? Because we are making our buyers' lives easier. We are introducing them to resources they might not have known about or thought that they discounted themselves from. And we can bring this to their fingertips, okay? So here we are, you type in the address, it will give you a list of matched programs. Now we have finished with the presentation and I'm going to check to see if there's any questions because we do have a couple of minutes on questions.
It looks like we just had one in the chat. If anyone else has any questions, they can throw them in the chat now.
Can they rent the house as part of the 10-year residency? No. Now, I am not the housing agency, but I'm going to tell you through when you read through the details, them renting doesn't necessarily qualify for the residency program because they don't own that home. And the residency program or requirement is based on them owning the home, having gone through the process of owning that home, okay? So if they're,
Looks like,
sorry,
oh no, yeah, go ahead. It's just that I was gonna say it looks like we have two more in the Q&A. You can see
you're
those.
welcome. You're welcome. Oh, there's some in the Q&A? Okay. Thank you for that. Is it strictly for first-time home buyers only? So I'm going to answer that question and say it is typically for first-time home buyers only. I will also say to you though, depending on the housing agency, you should direct that question to the housing agency because rules can change, okay? The other question, how do you know the minimum of an AMI threshold? Again, this is not for us to figure out, which is good news. This is being done by HUD, Department of Housing and Urban Development. So we don't, while I've given you the mechanic of understanding the how AMI work, I really want to leave with you here that that's not our role. Our role is to work in tandem. I've been saying that a lot, right? With the housing agency, with their counselor who will look at HUD's, because HUD is the one that actually gives this information on an annual basis based on the survey, that they will determine what that AMI should be based on household and based on income. So I'm saying all of this to say the counselor will be able to tell us that information. But yes, we can go to HUD.gov and find it. But as far as understanding the threshold, that's when we are looking for the number that HUD provides on an annual basis. I do implore everyone here, please take a look at Stratus, go to down payment resources, look how you can utilize this tool on your website, to social media, part of your email signature. So even with your email, you're educating your buyers, right? When you sit down with a buyer, you can go through and say, hey, I'm not sure if this particular property that they're eyeing even is eligible for down payment assistance. Type in that address, you'll know. But I have to say, even though we have all these tools available, please make sure that you're working with the housing agency. Please make sure that they start the process with the housing agency and don't go ahead and get ahead of themselves and go into contract, because the housing agency, for the most part, 99.9% of the time, will not be able to facilitate the process of getting a grant administered. Q&A. Do children count part of the household? Yes. They do count as part of the household. Or is only kids under the age, over the age of all kids? They live there, you can show proof, they count. How can we find the HUD AMI limits? Go to HUD.gov. HUD.gov. And take it a step further, the housing agencies, because the housing agencies are the ones that are really responsible for understanding what that benchmark is, AMI, and they usually use 80% AMI. So when you go to HUD or any other website, please know they're going to be a variety. There's going to be it ranging from 30% to 130%. I'm telling you that typically 80% AMI is the benchmark, is the criteria utilized for making sure they qualify for the down payment assistance. Okay. And I want to say one more thing before we end. Down payment assistance, I've been saying it over and over, grants. It can be used for the down payment or it can be used for the closing costs. Okay. So if they saved enough for the down payment but falling short on the closing costs, here is grants to the rescue if they qualify. I don't see any more questions. I have a thank you. You're welcome, Roya. You're welcome. No
It
problem.
looks like we just had one more in the Q&A. Not sure if you answered that one.
Okay. Oh, you're welcome, Yolanda. My pleasure. Thank you, Carol. I'm glad that was very helpful. I hope that I've demystified and debunked any myths that might have been out there. Question, are these funds usually given as a credit at the good? You know, nothing happens until the time of closing. So that's exactly right. This money that we're talking about is only released at the time of closing. It's wired in, and the housing agency is responsible for getting that process done. Good question. Only at closing. We know we're in New York, so what happens here? The buyer is responsible to have some money in order to make that contract binding, or the money, aka consideration, binding with their attorney. So the rest, so the grants will be received, usually via wire, at the time of closing.
Oh, excuse me. All right, I think covered everything. So thanks so much for the presentation, Natasha. Seems like everyone really enjoyed the information. I'm just going to put a link in the chat here to our webinars page on LA Realtor. If you guys want to rewatch this, we'll have it up later this week, so you can rewatch the replay. And I believe Natasha has some other webinars that she's done with us in the past on there, so I'm going to check out any of those. And yeah, anything to close this out with, Natasha?
Please educate your buyers. Let them know that they have options and resources. You be the hope when they've lost all hope. That is my last note.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. And thanks for joining us, everyone. And have a great rest of your day.
Bye-bye.